Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to episode 0 of the new Spider-Man podcast from On Comics Ground, Livin on the Edge. Episode 1 will be coming at a later date, so this is just going to be a short episode where me and my good friend Ian over here are going to talk about some of the Spidey books that came out this week. So, hello, I am Alec.
Hey.
I'm a staff. Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
My name is Alec. I'm a staff writer. I'm a senior staff writer at On Comics Ground. And this is Ian. Say hi, Ian.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Ian. I'm also a senior staff writer for On Comics Ground.
And so, like I said, we're going to be just talking about a couple of the Spidey books that came out this week. So this week we had Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man #1 by Tom Taylor, and we had Miles Morales Spider-Man #2 by Saladin Ahmed.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ian,
where do you want to start with?
Which one?
Which do you want to start with?
Let's talk about Miles Morales. I want to save
Sure, yeah,
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man for later.
Yep, that's fine. So yeah, the first of two books then will be paradoxically the second issue of the book that had its second issue come out this week. Miles Morales Spider-Man #2, sorry. The second issue of the new ongoing series, written by Saladin Ahmed with art by Javier Garron. Let me just get the correct numbers here. Colors by David Curiel, VC's Corey Petit as providing letters, and Marco D'Alfonso providing the cover. This is actually a really, really fun second issue. The first issue, which came out the same week as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse hit theaters, was really, really, really damn good. I mean, this is for those unaware, this is actually the first solo ongoing series for Miles Morales that's not being written by the character's original co-creator and writer, Brian Michael Bendis, since Bendis left Marvel Comics to work exclusively at DC Comics within the last year, so he's been writing Superman and Action Comics over there.
Blessing and a curse.
Yep. And since then, like, his various different characters that he's most well known for, like Jessica Jones and Miles Morales here, have kind of been given different writers to take over them. And we saw the start of Miles' new journey with a new creative team last month. So this is the second installment in that. And it's actually really good. It's a very fun installment, basically kind of continuing onward from from the establishing content from the first issue, where we kind of get a little bit more insight into Miles Morales' school life at Brooklyn Visions Academy. Get a little bit more interactions with him and his teachers. We get introduced to a new supporting character in the form of the vice principal of Brooklyn Visions Academy, Mr. Dutcher. I think it's Dutcher.
I think it is.
And kind of get, like, he's kind of a VP that kind of has it in for Miles for some reason, as Miles is starting to find it difficult to sneak around Brooklyn Visions, to kind of sneak off to do some web slinging and whatnot. And it also follows up on the events at the end of the last issue, where as Miles is out on patrol one night, he finds out that he runs across a bank robbery that seemingly is being perpetrated by the Rhino, but in fact the Rhino is actually trying to deal with a bank robbery himself. He's not the one committing it. He's actually was drawn there because he's actually looking for a missing kid, and Miles ends up noticing that the bank robbers themselves are actually all really short in these weird tech suits. And when he unmasks one of them, it's revealed that the question, or like it's revealed that the kid in question is actually is it his nephew, or is it his cousin?
It's the cousin of his girlfriend.
Yeah, his cousin of his girlfriend, Barbara. So basically, you kind of see a little bit of follow up on that as Miles, as in his civilian self, kind of swings over to, or goes over to Barbara's house to try and talk to her and whatnot. Doesn't go that well, unfortunately, but basically kind of later that night kind of reunites with the Rhino, and they kind of basically begrudgingly accept to help one another as we kind of get a little bit more insight as to what the heck's going on, and we get at least one potential villain involved in this whole scheme, being another classic Spider-Man villain in the form of L. Thompson Lincoln, aka Tombstone. So that was kind of cool. I like Tombstone. That's got a bit of a soft spot for him thanks to the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series.
I like that Tombstone's getting like a bit, like he's been in more stuff lately.
Yeah, it was kind of fun seeing him in Into the Spider-Verse actually as well.
And in the game
non-speaking role, but still pretty fun to see him in that.
Yeah, like one line, I think.
Yeah.
So did.
But
Thorn,
yeah, Mm-hmm. But it's pretty fun to see him kind of revealed. These are apparently basic kids to kind of commit bank robberies as kind of with the ultimate scapegoat being of like police wouldn't really necessarily immediately blame the kids or whatnot. And it's interesting though because from the sounds of it sounds like the suits in question just rendered them as being like kind of help them with breaking in, but it doesn't actually it doesn't sound like the one suit gave the kid, Barbara's cousin Eduardo electric powers or whatnot, just the means to channel them or something. So I almost wonder if the kids in question are like Inhumans or mutants or someone, or just meta-powered kids.
I didn't even think about that. That would be really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like basically the issue itself is pretty fun. We get kind of Rhino and Miles kind of in this kind of semi-reluctant team up. The characterization on Rhino is actually a lot of fun. I haven't had this much fun reading a comic with Rhino in it since I read Gail Simone's brief stint on Deadpool, where he briefly was a supporting character in that. As like it's kind of, I mean, more so even in this comic than in that, but it kind of humanizes him in a fair amount, which I always like when Spider-Man comics do that, when they try and flesh out and kind of develop the, when they try and develop the long-term kind of rogue members of Peter's Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to see that with O'Hearn here, where kind of like basically he kind of points out the fact that he's just trying just trying to do something for like a sorry, I'm trying to find a page in question here where it kind of explains what's going on. 1 second. That's meeting up.
He was doing this for like his late wife's niece, I think.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where basically, the niece in question actually thought the world of him, which was kind of cute. There's also a really fun anecdote I love, which I don't know if this is in reference to an actual comic, but if it is, I need to find this comic and read it. But specifically, O'Hearn mentions at one point he was actually a Santa Claus, like a mall Santa. And then he's like, basically, like, Miles responds, "You were a mall Santa?" And then Rhino responds with, yeah, then the Hulk messed it up. Like, someone please tell me if that's actually a Hulk, like an actual Hulk story or like Marvel Christmas story out there somewhere and like some sort of Marvel Christmas one-shot or something. Because if it is, I need to read that now.
I would bet good money that it's an actual story.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, the fact that then the Hulk messes it up implies that this would have happened after, like, post him becoming the Rhino. So I need to see the imagery of Rhino in a Santa suit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's a really fun issue, and like the ending is kind of got a nice kind of cliffhanger ending. Is Rhino and Miles kind of struggle at first with their team up, and they eventually kind of start to get in sync a little bit more, but not before Tombstone uses one of the kids to kind of blind them both and knock them out. They find a bunch of the other kids like hooked up to this weird machine, and basically it's like the two of them kind of admit that they don't really know what to do. All of a sudden, Captain America shows up, and he's kind of basically saying, and the last page is basically Captain America saying, "You're not going to do it alone." So I'm looking for it's a pretty enjoyable, fun issue. Ahmed seems to have a really good grasp on Miles' voice, on Gog's voice, writing. Like he writes a really good Rhino. I don't know that he's he's written the Exiles version of Exiles Peggy Carter Captain America plenty, but I don't know that he's written the main Marvel Universe Steve Rogers Cap that often. But I would bet I'd be willing to bet money on the fact that his Cap's gonna be pretty damn fun to read. So.
Yeah, and I was saying like earlier as we were talking I don't recollect if this is the first time Miles has seen Steve after the whole Secret Empire thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is the first time they've met after that, that could lead to some really good and interesting development between the two of them next issue.
Agreed. I mean, if nothing else, it also allows for some fun comedic potential, since things would be understandably strained. I mean, it's also kind of interesting because, like, within Steve's own book and within Captain America right now, like, Cap's reputation is not at its best coming out of Secret Empire, and as a result of that, and, like, in particular, because he's not the one leading the Avengers now, but Black Panther is. There are a lot of, like, kind of, there are, you know, certain groups and, like, interest groups in the U.S. that are trying to use that to kind of further poison Steve's image and kind of getting the American public to doubt him. Now, granted, Miles would never believe any of this in his heart of hearts, but it's still kind of an interesting thing to set up, and it almost kind of makes me wonder how, like, Rhino's going to respond to that as well. Given the fact that Rhino himself would have a very different perspective on Cap, because it seems like, I mean, the cover that they show for issue 3, which comes out on the 20th next month, still has Rhino there and has, like, you know, Steve there as well. So presumably this team up will just be, you know, this, you know, double act will become a trio for the next issue, which should be a pretty fun one.
Yeah.
And I do want to give, like, a special shout out to Javier Garmon's art and, like, kind of how fun and expressive it is, and I like how it's kind of got a kind of fluid but cartoony kind of vibe to it.
Absolutely, it's downright gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I mean, I've been a fan of his work since, I think the first time I came across it was one of the first times anyway, was in Batgirl Futures End #1, the last Batgirl issue Gail Simone wrote for that series, and I loved it there. He's really good at, like, doing that kind of overly, like, you know, cartoony, muscular, you know, very exaggerated facial stuff, but in a way that it doesn't really take you out of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, also, as I jokingly mentioned to Alec before we started recording, there's a particularly fun panel of Rhino and Miles from behind, and gotta admit, Rhino's got a really nicely sculpted butt. I'm sorry, I have to share that. It's important that people know this.
It's okay. He's thick.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a fun issue, and we definitely do recommend checking it out. I wouldn't necessarily say pick up just this issue. I would actually say try and track down issue #1, which should be relatively easy to find at this point. It did come out last month.
It shouldn't be out of print yet.
It shouldn't, no. If not, and I mean, I think even if it were, I imagine this is probably a book that will get at least 1 second printing.
Yeah,
for
probably.
the first issue. So, and even if that's, you know, if you still start, you know, if that's not an option, there's always Comixology/Marvel.com, or, like, Marvel's digital, their own digital service app, where both are easily available to download. So, but we both do, like, I mean, if you at all enjoyed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and are looking to get into reading Miles more, even if you enjoyed, like, say, his original Ultimate Comics series, but haven't really been actively following him that much since, this is a really good and easy book to kind of jump onto and really read and enjoy.
Agreed. And, like, one of my favorite, what I've loved so far from Ahmed tackling Miles is that he's, like, leaning more focus into of dealing with Miles being a half black, half Latino kid in the U.S. Because I mean, I remember the first issue, his mother talked about all the children being detained in and then in this one, there's a great panel where Rhino says to Miles, "You don't know what it's like for everybody to look at you and think they know you." And Miles is like,
yeah, he's like, yeah. With, I might know more about that than you think, big man.
Yeah. I love stuff like that, and I hope that I have confidence that Ahmed will, like, get into more of that character, because that's something very interesting.
Yeah. Like, I mean, for myself, I've been following Ahmed's writing since since Black Bolt.
Mm-hmm.
And that series is phenomenal. Like, I think I've read almost every, if not every single comic series he's written. And, like, as someone who's only really relatively new to writing comics professionally, he's not had a single bad comic come out yet that I've come across. Like, between this series, between Exiles, between Quicksilver No Surrender, and between as Black Bolt, as I said, and whatnot, and his Boom original creator-owned series Abbott, all are phenomenal stuff. So like I do highly recommend checking out all of them. But specifically, I mean, this is a Spider-Man podcast one, so and like specifically for the case of this, we do really recommend checking out this book here.
Yeah, and also if you haven't, from a few months ago, Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1, which he also wrote.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, that was another good one, which basically goes into gives some insight on the symbiote. Like for myself, that was another one I absolutely loved, and again, really shows the strength of Ahmed as a writer. Because like for myself personally, I've never been that big a fan of any real aspect of like Venom in particular, other than maybe the Agent Venom stuff with Flash, and it's more just because I like the kind of transformation process that Flash Thompson goes through as a character becoming Agent Venom.
I promise you, as soon as you read Donna Cates' Venom, you're going to love the Eddie Brock Venom. I promise you.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually finally pick up the trade today for myself. After hearing enough positive praise about it, I'm gonna finally check it out. So hopefully I will enjoy it. But like the thing that got me to really fall in love with the symbiote was actually that Amazing Spider-Man annual that Solid and Ahmed wrote. So if you can find that annual, that one might be a little bit trickier to find, but again, it should be relatively easy to find digitally.
Yeah.
And in terms of single print issues, I mean, some stores might still have them in stock. I mean, I think it came out in September or October, I think. So
it came out in mid-September.
Yeah, September. Okay, yeah, but we do still highly recommend checking that out.
Mm-hmm. So, swinging over from that, we have Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man #1 by Tom Taylor. And personally, I was kind of nervous for this because Spectacular Spider-Man, that just ended. And honestly, I think I was feeling like, okay, I think all the focus right now should just be on Amazing Spider-Man and that new run with Nick Spencer, because that new run is fantastic. And if you guys haven't read Nick Spencer's run on Amazing Spider-Man yet, highly recommend it. Please read it. It's much better than Spider-Man, or Amazing Spider-Man, I mean, has been in recent memory. But yeah, like I was just kind of cautiously optimistic about this. I was aware, I know Tom Taylor is a good writer, but it's so easy for it to just fall into being the secondary ongoing that a lot of other characters have. So I was kind of nervous about it, but it is very, 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 very what I love, and this is what they said from the get-go when the solicitation for it came out. But they said this is going to focus on Spider-Man, on the friendly neighborhood aspect of Spider-Man, like as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
Yep.
And in this first issue, it shows that right out the get-go. Like Spider-Man saves a couple people from falling off of a bridge, and they try to
basically kind of swerving to avoid like this large pothole, which I mean, like one of the things I really love right from the opening, and like even like when I read the preview for the book last weekend, what I found kind of amusing about this book is that it feels like it has like a kind of insight into New York City, like just in terms of like the fact that New York City is this, I mean, granted, I don't live there, but from people I know, and like it is kind of a bit of a cliche, admittedly, but the fact that New York City does tend to have a lot of kind of like infrastructure problems, and I love the fact that that's something that's kind of a plot point in this from the get-go.
Yeah.
And it's funny that, of all Spider-Man comics to bring this up, it's one written by Tom Taylor, who lives in Australia.
Yeah. I mean,
the book that gives like the most like, insight into New York City in and of like in its actual physical structure and like real life relatable New York common everyday life or death scenarios that people getting into. Again, it's the Australian who brings that.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of shows the strength of Tom Taylor as a writer.
It's a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one.
Like Tom Taylor has been earning no shortage of praise over the last few years, and not undeservingly, like, and definitely deservedly so, I should say. Between like All New Wolverine, a lot of people really love his work on the Injustice / Injustice Gods Among Us, like the tie-in comic series that for those books that he's been writing up until recently. The Justice League Power Rangers crossover comic was a hell of a lot of fun. Like his time writing X-Men Red, which in my opinion is the best X-Men comic Marvel's published in nearly a decade. It's he's a very damn good writer, but admittedly, it's always a bit nervous when a new writer, kind of nerve-wracking when a new writer steps in to take over writing Spider-Man when they haven't written him that much before. Now Taylor
Yeah.
did write a little bit of him in the Hunt for Wolverine Adamantium Agenda miniseries last summer, wherein Peter was part of the supporting cast for that book, or ensemble cast, I guess. And he was all right in it. But I mean, like, there wasn't anything kind of mind blowing or like, oh, like that made me kind of feel like this is definitely a character I really want to see Tom Taylor write in the future. But what I really love about this comic is that it really does get to the heart of Peter Parker as a character and really show how truly decent a guy Peter is, in the same way that Zdarsky's run did, and most especially issue 310 of Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man did.
That issue is one of the best issues of a comic book in recent memory.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's
gonna
yeah.
Like, and I mean, like, this is not me saying that Zdarsky will never write anything just as good or anything. Everything Zdarsky writes will be awful. Like, no, I would never say that. Chip Zdarsky is awesome. I've actually met him a few times. He's genuinely hilarious. Just as hilarious as he seems on Twitter.
Yeah.
Possibly even more so. But like, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 310 is going to be one of the single best comics that Zdarsky will have ever, like, it'll be one of the standout defining comics of his entire career, just because it is just that damn good. Like, that, it's honestly a quintessential Spider-Man story.
Like, I haven't kept up with Spectacular Spider-Man at all, and when I saw this issue, like, lying in our Google Drive of review copies, so I read it, and after I read it, I, like, begged James, our editor, for anybody who is new watching stuff from On Comics, I pretty much begged him to let me write a review for it, because I just had to, because it was just so damn powerful. And Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man carries that. Like, it isn't a one-off issue like Spectacular Spider-Man 310 was, but but the heart comes from, like, how Peter just always wants to pay it forward to all of his neighbors. Like first with the guy he saved from the bridge. He tries to pay Peter, and Peter's just like, no, I don't take money. Pay it forward to all these homeless people in Central Park. And then, like, he helps his neighbor carry the groceries. He pays for lunch for. Is it he pays for lunch for a couple of his neighbors, or does he pay, or do they pay for him? I can't remember.
Well, I think what basically happened is that, like, the two people, like, he runs into a couple people. Like the basically, like, when he that money that the guy tries to pay him with at the beginning, Peter basically mentions that that there are a couple of there are three good people camping out on the corner of Third and Bowery. Jose Gracie or Vets. Miguel had troubles at home. You want to pay me back? Give them as much money as you can spare. So, like, the guy does, and then I think he ends up I think it's, like, supposed to be two of them there that Peter runs into a bit later with the money that other guy gave them, as they kind of offer to buy him lunch from the hot dog cart. And there's this really great little bit of monologuing from Peter going on as they're kind of eating these hot dogs. It's like, it's not a life-changing moment of Cash for anyone, but it's a today-changing. And that's something. I really love how powerful that is.
Yeah, it's...
So, like, and I mean, like, you can kind of feel from how it's written and like, how Peter's presented the entirety of the comic before, that Peter's someone who really wishes he could change their tomorrows and make all their tomorrows much brighter. But then he knows, unfortunately, that he can't. So all he can really do is to try and make things a little bit better for everyone else.
Exactly.
So, and I mean, again, like, there's, as you mentioned, there's a nice bit where he, basically, for Marnie, I guess is the old lady's name, where he basically carries the groceries up for her, and, like, she in turn kind of mentions that there's this other, like, one of the other tenants in the same building he's living in that's kind of being secretive, and, like, but that Marnie kind of noticed needs some help, so, like, and says, like, oh, you took pictures for Spider-Man, can you talk to this woman? She says, like, she might, Spider might be able to help this girl, basically. So he kind of, approaches her and whatnot. And there's actually a really fun bit of dialogue where after he first introduces herself to this woman, Delaney, she basically said to Marnie, like, Marnie, she said you knew a superhero. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of know Spider-Man. And then she's like, oh, I don't think he can help me. Does he know better heroes?
That
Like, that's the thing I really like about this book.
What does he say? He's like, wow, major kick to the ego. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what I love about that is that, like, as much as it is like the emotional heart of a successor to the emotional heart of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man by Chip Zdarsky, this book also feels like it's a spiritual successor in terms of its humor, which I really like. I mean, that's not like ultimately anyone who comes into reading a Spider-Man book, be it one that's starring Peter himself or Miles or Silk or Spider-Gwen or whatnot, there's a certain amount of humor or levity that's expected. So like and right away with this issue, you can clearly tell that Tom Taylor is going to be able to bring that, just as well as Zdarsky himself did. Because I really love that. Does he know better heroes?
Yeah.
And then my mind just suddenly flashes to Spider-Man in a shower, crying his eyes out, cradled in the ball.
Brought back.
That might be the most Spider-Man-esque 2 seconds of Spider-Man in any in any sort of motion-based visual medium ever.
Yeah. What I like the ending too in terms of humor, because so Peter gets knocked out by these super strong mob bosses or whatever.
After he tries to go and check on Delaney again. Yeah.
So he goes back to his room where Marnie said it's Fred who says Fred says that she left her laundry in his room because he said he would do it. Pierce is like, okay. So
Peter has no recollection of saying or doing, so that just seems weird.
So he puts on his mask and lays down for some. He lays down. Then he sees something moving in the laundry bin. Then he sees two kids with white hair and glowing white eyes come out.
And orange skin.
And so he just looks at them, and for a moment, and he's just apples. And
it's basically he basically pulls out one of the apples that Marnie had given him earlier.
Yeah.
Also, for those wondering, Fred basically is one of the two roommates that Peter currently has. He's currently living with Rand Robinson or Randy. I can never remember which is the younger.
Randy Robinson. Randy
Robinson, who's
and Fred
Robinson, the Daily Bugle's son,
and Fred Myers.
Fred Peters. And Fred is actually a roommate that they basically kind of they put an ad out for someone to take up another room to help with paying the rent and whatnot. And Fred's actually the supervillain Boomerang, which Peter as Spider-Man knows, but Peter can't really let on that he knows that he's Boomerang at first. I think eventually he does find out in a recent Spider-Man arc, but basically
he's already in Amazing Spider-Man he already knows, and he there was a two-parter where they went to the bar with no name, and it was trivia night, and Peter was playing Spider-Man trivia and winning, and then Kingpin put a hit out on Fred. And then it was actually cool because they grew closer as friends, and Peter starts to believe, oh, maybe this guy is actually reformed. So, I guess here they're water is still not completely under the bridge because Peter still is annoyed with Fred, but Fred is I'd recommend reading the Amazing Spider-Man 6 and Amazing Spider-Man 7 from 2018. Because it gives amazing insight into Fred as a character, then there's another 10-page story after the main story. Aunt May has cancer, y'all.
Yep,
and it hurt. This is something that I love and I absolutely hate at the same time because it's that is just a major gut punch to Peter.
Yep. There's basically throughout the story,
everybody else
kind of narrated from May's perspective as she's desperately trying to write a note to Peter, apologizing to him. It basically it starts with "Dear Peter, I'm sorry," and then the next bit of the letter the note that we're seeing her write to Peter is, "I just didn't want you to worry. which is like so Aunt May, and it's just it really kind of.
It reminds me of it took me back to September when I first played the Spider-Man game.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you know what happens in it? Because I don't want to spoil it for you, just in case.
I mean, I honestly have not gotten around to playing any more of it than I had, unfortunately, back when it first came out. So I'm still like stuck on the Shocker boss fight.
Okay,
In the
so
bank.
I should just stop talking about it there then.
Yeah.
But something
Just say
happens.
I mean, I guess you can just say that there's a similar note in that, I guess.
There is a similar note with that
Mhm.
exact line that said, "I didn't want you to worry,"
Mhm.
which
But it's
really hit
yeah.
me.
The
But
story itself is really, really beautifully, kind of really beautifully weaved as we kind of get like intercut between like, May's day and like briefly kind of opens like whilst May's writing this note, we kind of cut to the day before with like Peter and MJ out on a date, and it's kind of fun because like basically Peter's swinging around like up to the top of the Empire State Building. They have like this kind of cute little, candlelit kind of dinner sort of thing, and he even has like MJ wearing a spider suit, Spider-Man suit of her own.
and she's like, "It's hard to breathe in this thing." And he's like, "You'll get used to it. Breathing's overrated."
Yeah, I know. Mhm.
But yeah, like my thing with Aunt May having cancer is that this could be something like monumentally powerful. It already is, but it could be in the long run, it could be something monumentally powerful if they stick to their guns and don't make it and don't like either have or get cured of it by some miracle, or have it be just a very minor cancer that is perfectly treatable and shouldn't really cause her death or whatever. Because like from the way it is narrated, it's very grim for her. Like this is something incredibly serious. Like this could be leukemia or brain cancer or spinal cancer, something like that. It could be something.
Basically, all we can really all it really gives us in May's narration and like at the tail end of the comic, her at the this cancer center with this doctor there is basically just that she basically kind of came in on like the very like last minute thing apparently for this appointment, and then also she mentions that there's a couple of other people who need to speak with you, which kind of implies that there could very likely be something, as that would mean because a very real thing about cancer is that you don't just have like the one doctor, you have your chemotherapist, you have you have like several different doctors trying to manage your treatment process. But we still don't know, like, I mean, all that we really are given from May's own perspective is that, the last few words are, don't be angry. I just didn't want you to worry. A few weeks ago, I found a lump.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that in particular seems to imply breast cancer, or at the very least, what started out as that.
It could be breast cancer, which I think that might be a good middle ground, where it's like, it's nothing like super severe, but it's not like super treatable either. Because at May's age, finding out she has breast cancer, that must be in like a late stage.
Yeah.
So,
or even if it were early at her age, treatment process, treatment options are more limited.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
because of the fact that at that age, I mean.
So this is
directly, but I think enough of us out there kind of unfortunately had like a loved one who's been in this kind of situation, and we kind of learned unfortunately the hard way that there are when you reach a certain age, regardless of really of any kind of anything that really even happens, like fall, like with breaking a hip or anything like that, any kind of major medical surgery or medical action is much more difficult because the body's ability to cope with that is just not what it would be in a younger person. So
yeah,
this could be something that's early onset and would normally not be that big a deal, but because of May's age, it's something that is going to be trickier to handle, regardless of what it actually is.
Yeah, like my grandmother, I really can't remember if she actually had breast cancer or if she was getting like tested for it. But regardless, she came out on top and everything was okay eventually.
I'm glad to hear that.
But it is definitely a scary thing, and I'm kind of, on one hand, I'm not surprised it took this long to approach that. because like everybody's like every Marvel in general has always been giving May plot armor. Like even when she got shot and was at death's door, brought in the devil to undo it.
Well, that was after every single other person in the Marvel universe couldn't help treat a simple bullet wound.
Yeah,
Not even like an uber tech mega ray death ray gun thing, or like a mystical evil
it was just a bullet,
alien bullet or something.
It was a normal bullet, and
yep.
Like
and Peter, and to make it worse, again, Peter was able to use a mystical effect. Doctor Strange had to go travel and consult with every single possible person, like smart person or doctor person that Peter knows, be it hero or villain or anti-hero or whoever, to try and seek for help. And every single one of them said no, that they couldn't possibly do it.
Yeah.
So basically, ever since One More Day, any single time a hero gets shot in the, gets a gunshot wound, unless they have a healing factor, technically according to that comic, they should be completely dead.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Mephisto's been collecting a lot more marriages than I'm aware of. Maybe Peter started a trend. Who the hell knows?
Maybe. Who knows? But this leads to something a lot of people have been talking about for a long time. Mm-hmm. When are the comics finally going to address One More Day? When are Peter, MJ, and May going to come face to face with Mephisto again? And like, when are they going to talk about this and deal with it? Mm-hmm. And I think that day is coming very soon, because the first clue was, well, apparently. Now, Ian, you probably know about this more than me, but apparently Mephisto's been popping up more in the
Yeah, Marvel. I mean, he even popped up last week in Champions first #1 issue, which is another book that Miles features in, and I do recommend people checking. But he did pop up at the end of that comic. I mean, and there have been like other things here and there. Like for instance, the most recent arc of Amazing Spider-Man under Nick Spencer featured, had Black Cat guest starring in it, and at the end of it, Peter basically admitted that he doesn't specifically say like give the full details as to what happened, but he does specifically say that he did something to alter it so that some people didn't remember his, who he was, and then unmasks to Felicia, revealing his identity as Peter Parker to her once more.
Yeah.
And then of course, that does directly kind of reference or allude to the fact, because the thing is, for like the last almost 2 decades, basically since One More Day came out, there's been very little reference to the fact that Peter did unmask himself and make his public identity known. Or usually when a plot point from before that is referenced, it's usually kind of in an awkward kind of, oh yeah, that I guess that did kind of happen sort of way. Like at one point, I remember there being a storyline where Peter runs into Tony at one point, and like Tony has trouble remembering who Peter is, even though at one point Peter basically was living within an Avengers mansion and was like Tony's protege. And again, like Peter and MJ were both living there, and also Jarvis was was in relationship with May, like, and yeah, like Tony's like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of happened. It was kind of sort of how it was written. And that's usually how they've kind of dealt with that sort of thing, other than the occasional odd kind of like poking, like, oh, who knowing reference sort of thing. Like, they did that once in Spider-Man Deadpool when Mephisto said that he achieved the ultimate victory over Peter Parker at one point to Deadpool. It's a thing that's kind of been on or off, basically. But, I don't know. For myself personally, whilst I obviously do want to see it addressed, not just retcon, that's the key thing to remember here. I want to see the story addressed, because as it stands right now within continuity, Peter basically made a deal with a devil or Satan-like-esque figure, more or less Satan, to save someone he loved, and he basically came out on top from that, which is a really kind of awkward, cumbersome, and just plain messed up message to send with the character. First of all, that Marvel markets as their everyman character more so than any other. And secondly, the one that they market the most to children, like the one that they will slap on kids' lunchboxes, on kids' underoos, and slap onto their backpacks, and do like food tie-ins for more than anything else. Like the fact that that's true of a character like that is really kind of messed up, and it's something that's needed addressing for a while. But just plain retconning it or ignoring it, saying, "Oh, it didn't actually happen," it's not really satisfying. It's a lazy, cheap way out. So,
Exactly.
and like Alec and I both kind of want to see it, and I know others feel the same, where they want to see it, the story actually directly addressed in continuity, and have like Peter directly confront Mephisto. Because honestly, from where I stand anyway, what could be more inspiring and more empowering to people and a greater message for Marvel Ascend with their everyman character than to show that their everyman character can outsmart the devil himself.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's the other thing with One More Day as a story in and of itself, is that Peter basically is able to use and manipulate the devil with no consequences, which is literally the antithesis of a make a deal with the devil bargain. Because, like, yeah, Peter lost his marriage with MJ, and, like, they don't really remember that they were married, but it's not like any of them have really been more or less the worse for it. Like, other than the fact that, the two of them, mention on occasion that, they could have been, particularly recently now that they have gone back together within Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man run. Other than that moment, where they've admitted that, they haven't really suffered as a result. Like, I mean, a couple issues into the post One More Day Amazing Spider-Man books, we had Peter just randomly making out with girls at, making out with random girls at a club or whatnot. That's not really suffering and anguish, is it, Mephisto? So,
No.
like, the story doesn't just hurt Peter's character. It also makes Mephisto look like an idiot or a chump.
Yeah.
And that's not really like what you should ever do with making a deal with the devil story, particularly if you're trying to do one with a altruistic, heroic character like Spider-Man.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, it doesn't make sense why. Well, I mean, of course, because Marvel wills it, and Quesada, I know there's a lot of discourse about who actually enforced One More Day, but I fully believe it's Quesada. But like, there's a lot of people saying, like, you just think, like, this story feels incomplete. It's felt incomplete since 2007 when One More Day happened. It's like it hasn't felt. The story never feels complete because Mephisto won, in a sense. So,
and it's just not satisfying for anyone as a fan of Spider-Man's character.
Exactly, because, like, that's been looming over the head avid reader of Amazing Spider-Man. So, but I feel I'm being optimistic in that these things are falling into place. Mephisto is showing up more. May is now dying pretty much. Like, this is something that's pretty unavoidable. Again, unless they do some bullshit and retconning or whatever. May is dying. Like, this is inevitable now. Like, this feels like it's all building to something, especially with the new mystery villain in Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man run, because he seems like he could be tied to Mephisto, and he's very knowledgeable of Peter's life and talks like he and Peter knew each other. Or they and Peter, I mean, like, it could be anybody behind that mask thing, but it feels like all of this is leading to something major, something that's going to address One More Day straight up. And
I mean, like, Nick Spencer has hinted that he does have plans for a big Spider-Man story of some kind, I think, for later this year. So
yeah, he's doing Hunted with Humberto Ramos, but that I don't think that's his big story, because I think that's just
I wouldn't say so either. I mean, Marvel's definitely pushing it a little bit, but I mean, I get the feeling it's probably gonna be like a full-on event miniseries sort of thing to tie into the main book.
I think it's just
and
6 issues.
Tie into the other Spider books at the same time, like Miles Morales, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Superior. Spider-Gwen would be iffier just because with the current status quo of Spider-Gwen, she's one of the only 2 characters I think who can navigate the multiverse at this point. In terms of Spider characters, so, like, probably would be kept out of it unless they find some way to tie her into it. I don't know, but
I'm never gonna call Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider.
Oh no, me neither. That's such a dumb code name. It's
Like,
entirely based on the visual aesthetic of, like, there's nothing about her beyond the sheer visual aesthetic that screams ecto, supernatural, paranormal, ghost, anything. So
and the fact that the name was already fucking taken.
I know.
They renamed him Spirit Spider, because they wanted to make one Ghost Spider, but like a name change like that is just so stupid. Like,
It is, yeah. I mean, you might as well literally just start calling, like, Miles Morales Vampire or something like that, so that you don't
or
have to call
Kid
him
Arachnid,
Spider-Man.
or Kid
Just
Arachnid.
Yeah.
Remember Kid Arachnid? That
Yeah, oh
was
god, yeah. Just,
and Spidey.
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like something is definitely going to happen, and I can only hope for the best. But overall, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man #1 was fantastic. We totally recommend you pick it up. Anyway,
I just want to also give a shout out to the art teams for both stories in it, by the way. Taylor reteams with his the artist from his last major story arc on the Wolverine, Juan Cabal, who delivers equally gorgeous and detailed artwork here as he did in on the Wolverine arc. So if you enjoyed his art there, you will love it here. So Nolan Woodard is colorist, and Travis Lanham is the letterer. And then the backup story, page here, has art from Marcelo Fiore. Fiore. I apologize for butchering that last name. Roberto Poggi, and Jim providing inks, Jim Campbell on colors, and again Travis Lanham lettering. So just shout out to those two art teams who provide some absolutely gorgeous artwork for both stories.
Absolutely. And what was his name again? The cover artist. His name is Andrew. I can't remember his last name, but
I can get that for you. I got the book right here. So Andrew Robinson.
Yeah, Andrew Robinson. I hope he continues to do the cover art for a long time, because, like I was telling, we were talking about earlier.
Before we started recording.
Yeah, the art definitely reminds me of early 2000s Spider-Man art, like John Romita Jr. and Mark Bagley, and it definitely reminds me also of that one kind of iconic cover of the 2000 PS1 game. Just in how the buildings are. Actually, that might be the next issue's cover. That reminds me of that, but regardless, cover art is amazing. But yes, we definitely recommend this book. We definitely recommend Miles Morales Spider-Man. We recommend Spectacular Spider-Man 310. We recommend Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1 from September, and Nick Spencer's run of Amazing Spider-Man. So that is it pretty much for episode 0. Again, we will have episode 1 soon eventually, but right now we hope you guys enjoyed it. Ian, any last words to everyone watching?
Really, I mean, I'm just going to add that I'm also going to put my personal stamp of recommendation. Zdarsky's Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man run, it all has that, that same level of heart and humor to it. It also has one of my favorite newer additions to the Peter Parker supporting cast with his recently revealed sister, Teresa, who I'm really hoping will end up showing up in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, because she was a really fun addition to Spectacular. And she kind of just unfortunately got written out of there very briefly towards the tail end of Zdarsky's run. But yeah, if you just do check out all that run too, because it was a really damn good run overall.
Couldn't agree more. And so, my name is Alec. That's Ian.
I'm Ian.
So we'll get back to you guys soon. We hope you guys enjoyed our, what do we call it? Well, episode 0, our kind of like intro episode to this new podcast series. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.